Greetings, APWU members, postal heroes, one and all, and the many friends that joined us this evening. Welcome, one and all. Thanks for joining. Hope everybody's safe and well in the struggle. This live stream with the president tonight is going to be a little different. We're going to be focused on one issue, the legislative landscape, how to get across the finish line. And because this legislation affects obviously not just postal workers, but the whole country, we've also invited allies and friends to join us tonight to be part of this conversation and presentation with not only myself, but with APW Legislative and Political Director, Sister Judy Beard. And again, thanks for joining us. So let me start off by just going off script from the main subject very quickly, and then that will be the end of anything except the legislation. Many of you have probably read or heard for APW members, our COLA figures for this 6-month COLA is now in our cost of living allowance. It's over $1,300 a year, 63 cents an hour for career employees. But sisters and brothers, APW family, that's contingent upon the ratification of the tentative agreement. So please work over the next week and 10 days to make sure those ballots get out, and let's make sure we have secured what we've negotiated and what postal workers have earned. Enough said on that front. As we talk, feel free to put your questions about the legislation into the chat, and we'll get to questions and answers pretty quickly. So what do we got? We got the Postal Service Reform Act. Smashing success in the House of Representatives last week. 342 votes to 92 votes. Bipartisan support. The majority of the Republican representatives on the House side voted for this important legislation. And the reason for the call tonight is to make sure we get across the finish line. You know, we're in the middle of the Winter Olympics. This is our Olympics. We got to go out and win the gold medal. And we have a real opportunity to do that. So we still have some challenges, but very quickly to summarize the bill in broad stroke, and Sister Beard may add some more during the rest of the conversation to some of the specifics. But basically, the legislation does 4 or 5 basic things. One, it does away with this onerous, draconian pre-funding mandate of retiree health care costs long into the future, had to be paid in a short period of time, passed in 2006 by Congress, manufactured a financial crisis, but it becomes a real crisis over time. The post office was not able to pay most of that, so they still owe it to the federal Treasury. And quite frankly, this bill, if passed, will do away with this onerous pre-funding mandate, all the implications. It will cancel out any unpaid debt. It will relieve the post office some of the ongoing pressure. And basically, the post office will be able to return as a pay-as-you-go system with those benefits, which they were successfully doing long before the 2006 Postal Accountability Enhancement Act that put this albatross around the neck of the public postal service, and therefore not just postal workers, but the people of this country. Behind this onerous mandate, there was a lot of cutting, a lot of reduction in services, reduction of hours of operation, plant closings, short staffing, and all of that deeply affects the people of the country. So that is the old USPS Fairness Act that never quite made it to a bill on its own. That has been incorporated into this legislation now, HR 3076. If I got the number wrong, Judy will correct me. So that's one. 2 is Medicare Integration. Now, there's some misconceptions about that. They're very easy to clear up. All Medicare integration means, and it's only on a prospective basis, doesn't affect any current retiree and the choices they've made. But in the future, as postal workers retire and reach Medicare eligibility age of 65, to keep the fee plan, we will have to be in Medicare A and B. A is free, B costs some. But it's very fair to postal workers. 80% of our people do this voluntarily in retirement because it's better for our health and it's better for our finances. And basically what happens is Medicare B becomes primary, fee becomes secondary, and we eliminate all out-of-pocket expenses, 100% coverage, And in that sense, it actually saves money for postal workers. Now, only prospective, current retirees, if they do want to get into Medicare B and did not before, there's a penalty now. If one decides to do that, that penalty will be waived with this bill. And there will be a one-time opportunity if people who are currently retired and over the age of 65, let's say somebody 73, 74 did not do it, they'll be able to get into Medicare B and have those penalties waived. There's also exceptions for people that do not use Medicare, can't get Medicare, such as people who retired outside of the country, veterans who get their entire health benefits through VA and the like. So there's some discussion about, well, but I want to be in FEED. We're all going to be in FEED. This does not change our federal employee health benefit program. It's still FEED. People will still have the health plans they have. They'll have open season, the ability to make changes if they want to in open seasons, just like they do now. Now, within FEED, there will be a postal-only group. Why? And it's going to be a huge group. It's going to be over 1 million people, okay? But the reason is simple. The Medicare integration will save us as individuals and the Postal Service money. Because with Medicare B becoming primary and FEED becoming secondary, our premiums are going to be less than they would be otherwise if everybody wasn't in Medicare. But to capture those savings, we have to be a separate group. We're not here to save the rest of the government money. We're here to help save the post office money. And we're not here to save the rest of the federal employees money on their premiums. We're here to save the money for postal employees. So it has to be a postal group within FEED, but it's FEED. And sometimes you hear these rumors, well, does that mean the post office is going to be running my health plan? No, it's the exact same relationship now to the Postal Service as it will be once this bill passes. It's going to be run by FEED, Federal Employee Health Benefit Program, and that's overseen by the Office of Personnel Management. So nothing will change on that front. The third important thing is it incorporates under the law 6-day delivery. Now that's not just a letter carrier issue. That's an issue of how the Postal Service serves the people of the country and how we can build more creative and new services off of that. If we're not delivering every day, somebody else will be delivering every day. That affects our jobs. It affects the service to the people. And so every year we've had to go to Congress to get the 6-day language in the appropriations. This would make it the law. And as an aside, UPS and FedEx are railing against this piece of legislation. And part of the reason they're railing against it is because of the 6-day language and language that makes it very clear, as it should be, that the postal system packages, letters, and flats are one integrated system. UPS wants to separate out the packages, try to actually make it so the Postal Service cannot be in the package business. But if they at least separate it, they then want to be able to raise costs for the postal customers, which means they can raise more costs on their end and make more profit. That's what they're about. So that's a very important part of the bill. There's also a transparency part of the bill. It's not what we fully wanted in terms of service standards, but the bill means that the post office can have to report out on a frequent basis what's going on with service, and it gives us the ability and the public the ability to dig in and fix these problems more. And the last thing that's worth noting is there is some language that will enable the Postal Service to negotiate with local and state governments to provide more services. That can only be a plus for the people of the country. It can only be a plus for those of us who work for the Postal Service. And part of the reason many of the friends joined us tonight is so much of what we're talking about is so important, the ability to the Postal Service to return to the robust state we need it to be and to carry forward for generations to come as a vibrant public postal service. So we're excited about what's going on. The bill's not perfect. No piece of legislation is, but I've done a number of media interviews the last week, and everybody's asking me, what's different this time from all the other efforts over the last 10 or 12 years? And I think what's different is the major players, the 4 postal units, postal management, the mailing community, and the public all decided the only way we can get legislation passed is if we agree where we can agree on the big issues and leave those things that we may have disagreements on for another day. And that's what we have done. And that's the way we created this bipartisan coalition. Because if it's not bipartisan, brothers and sisters and friends, we're not going to get legislation. So we came out of the House with great wind behind our sails, and we are now focused on the Senate. We've hit some snafus. It's not surprising. There's no easy sailing when we're dealing with those many in Congress and certainly Wall Street that want to kill the public postal service. So we certainly know it's still not going to be an easy path, but we are poised to do something that we have this is a once in a generation opportunity. And that's what I really want to leave you with here tonight. This is our chance. And we all, every single person on this live stream, has a chance to make a difference, to talk to our family, our coworkers, our friends, our neighbors, and ask them to call the Senate, your senators. We have the number that'll be put up on the screen many times. There it is right there, 844-402-1001. It's easy. You call, you get connected right to the senator, and you call back to get connected to your second senator. You can do these calls at work. I'm going to leave that for Sister Judy Beard, our distinguished and outstanding legislative political director, to explain the process a little more. Sister Beard, are you there? Take it away, and then we'll get to some questions and answers and some follow-up.
Thank you, President Dimondstein, for highlighting the Postal Reform Act on this very important call. The Postal Reform Act is fair. It's very fair to our active postal workers as well as our retirees. And it will strengthen the Postal Service so that the postal workers can improve the service they bring to the American people. Yes, as President Dimondstein said, it passed in the House with 342 yes. But out of that 342 yes, it was 120 Republicans, thanks to you. Because in the years past, when we said, call your member of Congress, you knew to call both members of Congress, not just one, both members of Congress. And you made this happen. I remember the many campaigns that went by. U.S. mail, not for sale. And we were, you were hollering at cars and letting the public know. Whose post office is it? The People's Post Office. You made it very clear, loud and clear, and members of Congress heard you. And that's why we are where we are today. The bill is now in the Senate. Now, this bill not only is good for our workers and good for the public, it saves the Postal Service at least $45 billion over the next 10 years. Money that could be used for modernizing the post office, making it easier for people with disabilities to go into a post office, fixing up the post office, hiring new employees, purchasing more machines. This bill will help us keep the post office alive. After all, it's part of the United States Constitution. Yes, the bill moved to the Senate, and that's why we want you to tell your senators to vote yes when this postal bill is taken up on the Senate floor. Vote yes. And that phone number for you to call again is 844-402-1001. 844-402-1001. And we don't want you just to call, not just you by yourself. We want everybody in your household to call. We want you to sit down and make a list of relatives, friends that you have email addresses to, and ask them to call. That's going to take a little bit of your time, but that's what we are. We're fighters for justice. And this is indeed a fight for justice. HR 3070, that was the number, that was correct, President Dimondstein, is a big step toward preserving the people's public Postal Service. Tell your senators that, the post office employees, they work 7 days a week. They work in the building on holidays, on weekends. They work overtime. Some of them are working 12, 14 hours a day to make sure that the American people get the essentials and their checks, their medicine on time. But this will improve the service to the American people. President Dimondstein mentioned the non-postal products. It's in the bill. And of course, you're well aware of the passport business that the Postal Service does. That's a non-postal product. Well, the Postal Service can do all kinds of products for the American people. It could be convenient for you to just run up to the post office and get your fishing license. Run up to the post office and get your hunting license. Run up to the Postal Service and maybe make copies that you need. Maybe you don't have a scanner at home and you can scan the document. So the Postal Service is for the American people and it should serve the American people. So that's why we like the non-postal products that the post office can negotiate with local governments, state governments, and tribal governments. The 6-day delivery, as President Dimondstein mentioned, is so important. I know sometimes you see your post office pull up 7 days a week. 6-day delivery is essential. And yes, there's still people who want to privatize the post office. They want to make sure that the prices go up, unaffordable, and the delivery go down. And 6-day delivery, letters and package, it will help secure our public postal service. And yes, the Medicare integration, it's not harmful to anybody. Most of our retirees, about 85%, they already have Medicare B and they like it. They voluntarily get it. And you're going to keep your federal health insurance, and the post office won't be managing this. OPM will be managing it like they do it now. The Postal Service will not be managing your health insurance. The Postal Reform Act, remember U.S. mail not for sale, and we want the Postal USPS Postal Service Reform Act to pass. Well, part of that Reform Act has the pre-funding in it that the Postal Service has to pay $5.5 billion under the law that passed in 2006 over a 10-year period. They had to pre-fund retiree health insurance 75 years out. How ridiculous is that? And members of Congress today thought that was totally unnecessary. No other company or federal agency has to pre-fund the health insurance. Everybody pays as you go. They get the money in and they pay it every 2 weeks as you go. And so the Postal Service, if this bill becomes law, will go back to pay as you go as they did prior to 2006. And that is just excellent. So it's important that you help us, as you have always did, make sure that this bill is voted on yes in the Senate in the next couple weeks. We're not sure the exact date that it's going to hit the floor, but we'll let you know. But every day, call someone. Tell them to make the calls, and you can make the calls more than once. And you have to make this call twice. You have to call the number. You'll be switched to one of your senators. And if you call right back in about 10 minutes or after your next break, you'll be switched to the next senator. So I say it on your next break because this is not a violation of the Hatch Act. This is a legislation that you can do inside of a post office, in your uniform, on your break. You can make the call to your member of Congress. So it's important that you show other people on their break how to do it. Say, look, watch me. I'm making the call. you're not going to get a senator on the phone. You'll probably get a staff person or an answering machine, but you don't know how important those calls are. Some senators come to work every day and say, how many calls did we get? Oh, that many people in my state is concerned about this bill. Oh, the phone is not working anymore. They got so many calls, it broke it. So it's real important that you let your senators know that they should vote yes on the Postal Reform Bill of 2022. Let them know that it's extremely important. And now I would turn it back to President Dimondstein.
Well, thank you so much, Legislative Political Director Beard. That was outstanding. I was going to ask you a question you already answered about the hat check, so you're way ahead of me. And with that, let me remind everybody, if you got any questions specifically around this issue for today, but let me turn it over to my executive officer, my assistant, Steve DiMatteo, who has some questions I think that came off the chat, or maybe it come in previous to us coming on the call. Stephen.
Sure do. Thank you, President Dimondstein. Hello, good evening, Director Beard. We've gotten lots of questions in advance, and we've got lots of postal workers and lots of our friends watching live on the stream. So I'm going to kick it off with one of the questions we got in advance, and it comes from Charlotte in Charlotte, North Carolina. And she wants to know, has the APWU partnered with NARF and the other postal unions to provide support in getting this legislation done? What's the coalition look like behind this?
Absolutely. We are partnered with NARF. In fact, President Dimondstein and the other postal unions signed a letter that NARF helped prepare to make sure that Congress knew that we were all on the same page with this.
Right, and to add, the four postal unions have been strategizing together and rowing together for many months, trying to, or I could say even more than many months, trying to get to this point that we're in a position to get this kind of bipartisan support and move forward. And sisters and brothers, that's what it takes. UPS has a hell of a lot more money than we do. But we got a heck of a lot more people, and we got justice on our side. So we're going to have to overcome them with the movement, just like we have been all along. And you're all part of it.
Great, super. Next question comes from Teresa. She's in Vermont. She wants to know, how did the Postal Service get into this mess in the first place? Why is it so underfunded?
Well, that's an interesting question. Judy, can I take a first crack at it?
Okay.
I think that, I mean, part of it goes back to history, which is in 1970, we became a self-funding entity, and the post office can only run off its own revenue, does not get taxpayer dollars. And certainly the changes in the mail mix, the impact of the internet on first-class letters, some of the economic crises, such as in 2008, as well as during the pandemic-induced economic crisis of the last few years, that has affected revenue. And I don't mean to say the internet is all on the negative side. It also has created e-commerce and a lot of growth in packages. But it's set up to be a break-even operation, not to pack money in the bank. But what really happened, what the real turning point was 2006 and the Postal Accountability Enhancement Act. And that really defunded the public institution. And behind that defunding, there was that tremendous reduction in service, plant closings, slowing down of mail, understaffing that came with it. And so while this bill, we don't think will solve all the financial problems and all the challenges going forward, it's huge in terms of the savings and in terms of getting rid of this pre-funding mandate. It's really just strangling the Postal Service. So there's a lot of factors in how we got in this mess. There's certainly management decisions along the way that made matters worse as well. Number of factors, but one big thing we can do to help right the ship is to get this legislation over the finish line.
And I would like to add that in 2006, the requirement that the Postal Service paid $5.5 billion a year. They started off paying it, And then at 2012, they couldn't pay it anymore. So the Postal Service didn't pay it, and the government put that on the books as debt. So $5 billion, 2013, 5 more billion, 2014, 5 more billion. So most of the debt that's on the books is because of the postal pre-funding that will be now taken away.
That's right.
Great. Thank you both. Next question we got live on Facebook. It's from Patty Preston. And I have to say, we've seen a lot of questions like this. Postal retirees that did not enroll in Medicare when they reach 65 want to know if they'll be penalized when they go to get into the program now.
Yeah, just as a background for people that may not know, any year that you do not, under current law, if you do not choose to get Medicare B when eligible, every year afterwards, there's a 10% penalty if you then want to get it. So it adds 10% each year to the cost. So this bill will give everybody who did not make that choice, but now would like to, and get into Medicare B. Not on a, nobody's compelled to do it who's already retired, but on a one-time basis and opportunity, they will be able to do it. Now, this bill as written, the new law would not be in effect till January 1st, 2025. So the waiver would not be immediate, but at that point, there would be a one-time opportunity and you could get in without paying the penalty. And that's a real plus for those who, looking back on it, wish they had done it, but now can't afford to.
And the bill has an educational component. So the Postal Service will be educating every single person that's affected by this bill of what all the rules are and how to take advantage of everything without any problems.
Great. Thanks very much. Next question is from James Gagne. He's in the chat on Facebook as well. He wants to know what happened to the money that's already been paid into the Retiree Health Benefit Fund.
It's sitting in the federal treasury. It amounts to about $38 billion. It's a lot of money. And that money will be used as part of the pay-as-you-go for future retiree health benefits, because that's what it's there for. So it should be used once this passes for the purpose that it's intended. But there will not be, the post office will no longer be forced to pay the rest of it, and the debt will be waived, and it's going to make billions of dollars of difference in savings to the post office. It takes off tremendous financial pressure. And all of these sort of this misinformation, the post office is always losing billions of dollars, billions of dollars, billions of dollars. And as Judy Beard pointed out, a lot of that is the debt that's being carried on the books, and that will be gone. Anything to add to that, Judy? What'd I leave out?
Oh, you did well.
Okay.
Great. Director Beard, I think you mentioned that the bill includes some language around expanded services. Leslie was on Facebook and she wants to know if the bill includes anything about postal banking.
Not specifically, but it's an opportunity for the American people to sit down with their member of Congress and make suggestions, or the unions to sit down with the post office and make suggestions. So it gives us a broad opportunity.
Right, and then if I can add, Stephen, that's an example. Certainly we would have loved to have that in the bill. And certainly it's a main goal of the American Postal Workers Union and many of our allies around the country. But had we insisted that this be in the bill would have been destroyed, because we have to keep the commonality that we have right now. So we're still working on the postal banking piece. We're in touch with Congress. We're in touch with postal management to try some pilots, working with them directly. And it's certainly high on our agenda for the future. And I think Sister Beard is absolutely correct. The idea of more expanded services that are in the bill gives us a great opportunity to start talking about what all those things could and should look like.
Aaron Brown had a question. He noted that Senator Schumer last week, or late last week, mentioned that he wanted to have a vote this week. Doesn't look like it's going to happen. Are there any concerns about keeping that bipartisan coalition you both mentioned earlier together as we wait on a vote on the Senate floor?
It's always a concern. It's always a concern, and that's why we're asking you to call your senators. We continue to meet with members of Congress, even if they are a sponsor on a bill. We continue to meet with them because they may change their mind. We're not the only people meeting with them. People that don't like the post office is also meeting with them. Right. So yes, it's very, very, very important that we call our senators every day and keep those that are on and get new members of senators to join the bill.
Ditto.
There we go. Had a question from Patricia. She wrote hers in before the show. She's in Grafton, New York. And she wants to know quite simply, what can people who are not postal workers do to get this bill across the line, and how can they help?
Judy?
People who are not postal workers can call their senators. We're asking everyone to call your senators, and they can call on this line, 844-402-1001. So we want you to sit down and look at your list of friends and relatives that you have email addresses to. Email them and ask them to make the calls. Ask them more than once, because we don't know when this bill is going on the Senate floor. And we want to just keep the calls coming in until it does.
And Stephen, did I understand that question came from somebody in Vermont?
Yes.
So look, the Vermont senators are on board, but we still want you to call and reemphasize, thank them. But if you want to get to another senator for whatever reason, if you want to call Senator McConnell, for example, you can always look up the direct switchboard number. This is our number that will lead you to your state senators. You could always call and ask to speak to anybody that you wish to as well. But we certainly want people to call the supportive senators as well and encourage them that they are doing the right thing, and we appreciate it, and let's get this done.
Great. I've got a couple more questions here, some that came in before, some that are coming in live. Just want to encourage people again to drop your questions in the chat. Question from Art in New York City. He wants to know, what role will the union play in managing the new healthcare funds? Is there a role for the union in this?
No, it's going to stay just like it is now. Federal Employee Health Benefit Program is still in place. It's going to be run by FEHB and OPM. And neither the union or the Postal Service will have any different role than we do now. Now, the unions do have our federal health plans. We will still have an APWU health plan. We have consulted deeply with them about this whole process, and they're enthusiastic and excited as well. But in terms of running the actual whole program, nothing changes.
All right, very good. Here's a question again around the expanded services. It comes from Nicole in Oregon. She wants to know, will this bill allow for additional services in rural areas? In our area, we could definitely use more passport offices, fingerprinting services, etc. What's the possibility for rural America if this bill passes?
Judy, you want to start?
Well, the possibility is great. The senators and members of the House of Representatives in the rural areas fought strong for this bill to pass, because you told them that you needed more services in your area. You told them how well you like the post office and how convenient it is. And they'll be fighting to make sure you get services. And we will be fighting with them.
And the bill is very broad on this question. It gives the post office the right to negotiate with state and local and tribal government for more services, and vice versa for those entities to negotiate with the post office. So we're going to have a role in what that looks like. But I've met people in some of the more rural states of the country that literally have to drive 100, 150 miles to get government services in person, many of which could be run through the local post office that's basically in every town. So we are very excited about the prospects here. Not everything we wanted, again, in terms of opening up the door for new services, but this is a real foothold And there's just a tremendous amount that we think the post office can do and it should do.
Here's a question that was in the chat a while ago, and I confess I lost it, but the gist of it was that this person had already called their senators and wants to know what else they can do to help get the PSRA across the line.
I would suggest you talk to your coworkers, your family, and if you're a coworker in the post office, encourage people to do this right from work, like Director Beard raised. We're on breaks, we're on lunch. Most people have cell phones now and smartphones, so it's easy. We all have friends, we all have neighbors. Many of us are involved with community groups, organizations, veteran groups, faith-based organizations. The world is ours. And historically, and it's no different now, people move Congress, not the other way around. So to reach out to others, I think is the best way that you can continue to help.
Super.
And by the way, anybody can use this number as well. It doesn't have to be an APWU member.
I had a question from Richard. He's in West Virginia. He wants to know if there are any senators in particular that the APWU believes could be holding up this legislation. Anyone that especially needs a phone call?
Judy, what do you think? There are, look, I think it would be very helpful. Senator Peters on the Democratic side is strongly in favor, and Senator Portman, who's the ranking member of the Homeland Security Committee in the Senate side, is the Republican ranking member. They're both very, very important for this bill. They both co-sponsored, but certainly the more they hear from the people of the country, the stronger that will be. So I think that would be a good place to start. If next week we believe somebody needs to be like very specifically targeted, we will put out the call for that. Right now, we think it's best to just call all of the senators and certainly the head of the committee dealing with this, both the chairperson and the ranking member. Certainly wouldn't hurt for them to hear from people all over the country, because they're not just representing their own states on this issue. They're having a say that's affecting the entire country. Judy, any other thoughts on that?
I agree with you 100%.
Okay.
They should call their United States senators. And Mark and I meet every day on postal legislation. And we're thinking of strategies to make sure that we get a bill across the line. So if we come up with some names, we're going to publicize them, and then you'll call them as well.
Here's a question, Judy. Somebody asked if there were any resources available, any fact sheets or flyers or anything like that where people could learn more information. Is there someplace we could direct those folks?
Definitely. APWU.org or U.S. Mail Not for Sale.
Very
And
good.
on the website, I see up on the screen is /postal reform.
That's right.
And we have a lot of information that Director Beard Shop has put together, Q&As, all sorts of info that I think you'll all find very helpful.
Very good. Next question. It's from Roy. We're talking expanded services again. He was on Facebook and wants to know if the Postal Service could provide internet connectivity in rural areas.
Go ahead, Judy.
That is something that we want them to do as well. That's one of the issues that we wanted to be included in this bill. But right now, they don't do it, but we are going to keep fighting for internet uses for all areas.
Yeah, it's a great question. Again, it is an example where we're trying to keep this bill tight, keep it strong, keep out amendments that would undermine the coalition and the bipartisan support that we have. Another example is we believe as the United States makes a transition from fossil fuel automobiles to EV, the post office is so well situated to be part of the new grid that's needed. Had we put that in this bill, I'm sure we could have found somebody to make an amendment. It doesn't have enough of the bipartisan support right now. So we're still working on that issue in other ways. But that's another example where, yes, we want it. The people of the country need it, but it's not part of this legislation because we have to deal with the big issues we can get past and then we'll work on the others going forward. But we'll be in a much stronger position if the finances of the Postal Service if the finances are strengthened. We're in a much better position to then fight for those expanded services going forward.
Here's a question, Director Beard, President Dimondstein. You've been encouraging people to make the calls. Sheikh Rahman, who is on Facebook, said he's tried to reach his senator several times, couldn't get him on the phone. What should he do?
Take
It's
that.
It's going to be difficult to get your senator on the phone. They have employees that work in their office. You can ask if you want to talk to somebody, ask to speak to the chief of staff, who's in charge of all the employees in the office. Ask, can you leave a message for your senator? Give them your address, your phone number, and tell the senator that you want a response back.
And don't be discouraged even if you get a recorder, because what we know from experience is we called a senator one time, maybe a year ago. Judy and I were on a call because of the COVID world. We weren't meeting as much in person. And they didn't commit, but they said, I don't know who or what you've done, but all I can tell you, I've gotten more calls on postal issue than anything else I ever gotten in my life. And the guy's been in the Senate for 50 or 60 years, right? He's one of the real old ones up there. But he acknowledged that they're aware of the calls they get. They monitor them, they chart them. So don't be discouraged if you get a staffer or even if you get a recorded message. That they're still taking into account what people are saying. The message is very simple. We're urging you to vote yes for the Postal Service Reform Act as written and has come over from the House. That's it. Thank you. You know, when we leave a message, it's friendly, it's upbeat, and it's certainly good to tell them you live in their state. You may want to say what town you're from, and this is what you're asking them to do.
Here's a great comment we got in the chat. I just want to shout it out because it's not a question, but a great spirit here. It's from Al. He says he sent out 56 emails asking his friends, his family, his church groups, people on the street to make those calls. Should everybody be like Al? That's my question.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And just so I can sound a little technologically savvy, so I can maybe try to fool people once in a while. You can text, you can tweet, you can Facebook, and you can do it all. And you can pick up the landline as well. So call all of your friends, family, neighbors. Al, thanks for the great example. Beautiful.
Here's a question from Jeff. He's on Facebook. He said he read somewhere that there were 14 Republican co-sponsors on the bill. Is that accurate?
Yes, it is.
So our job is to, and Judy, is it on our website on who co-sponsored or not?
If it's not right now, it will be tomorrow.
Okay, so we certainly want to keep them strong, but we want to add to it, and we don't want to take anything for granted from anyone, even if they're already on board. As I said earlier, and don't underestimate it, UPS, FedEx are working very, very hard to make sure that at least some of this bill does not see the light of day. And if it's not a whole package and some of it starts coming out, the whole thing is going to fall apart. So we have to overcome their money and their influence and their corruption to get this done. So this is going to come down to the power of the people. And I think that was reflected in the vote from the House. And we've got to make sure it carries over to the Senate. But it does underscore, if I can add, Jeff, just how much bipartisan support we do have. Because that is a significant number of Republican senators. And I think it's an equal number of the Democratic side, if I'm not mistaken, Judy. So they've kind of left it even. I think it's about 14 and 14.
Super. Here's one from Rocky. He's watching on YouTube, and he wants to know, what's the possibility of getting this on the floor soon? You touched on this earlier, both of you, but do we have a sense of timeline?
We don't have a sense of timeline, but we've spoken to Senator Schumer, and he wants to get it on the floor as soon as he can. So we're looking for by the first week of March or earlier.
Right. And as far as we're concerned, the sooner the better.
Great. Might ask you to answer another question because we've had it asked a few more times. What's happening to retirees if they didn't enroll in Medicare when they reached 65?
So going forward, they don't have to enroll in Medicare B to keep their fee plan because it's only on a prospective basis. But if they have changed their mind, already retired, and again, another example, if they're 75 now, they will have a one-time opportunity, and as Director Beard pointed out, there will be an educational process around it. They'll have a one-time opportunity to join B without the penalties. That's 10% a year for each year after 65 one did not join. So that's also a real plus for our current retirees. It's a win-win. They don't have to do it, but if they want to do it, they're not going to have the penalty that they would have otherwise.
Jim Varner asked a question. He's reacting to something you said earlier, President Dimondstein, about there being $30 billion or so in the Retiree Health Benefit Fund. We know how long those funds will last when the Postal Service moves to a pay-as-you-go plan.
They will last, under the current cost right now, they'll last approximately, from the actuary's view, so it's not an exact science, but they'll last about 10 years just out of that fund. And then, of course, the post office will continue to pay just as they did prior to 2006. So, but the fund gives us a cushion. And unfortunately, that cushion was used to try to destroy us. But once this bill passed, that cushion will be there. And so in that sense, it'll be used exactly what it was there for, but now, not 75 years in the future. So it's much better to be used now.
Jonathan Smith asked about delivery standards. He notes that they're not addressed in this bill. This was just as important as 6-day delivery. Why isn't it not in the bill? He said this would help with staffing and support the American people for the Postal Service.
I'll take the first shot at that. Very good question, Brother Jonathan. Look, here's the deal. If it was in the bill, we wouldn't have had the coalition and we wouldn't have had the bill passing the House. We could not get the Postal Service to agree to return the service standards. So we're going to continue to try to do it through the appropriations process and other means. And you're absolutely right that it's absolutely vital for the people of the country and the future of the post office. But had we insisted to put it in the bill, and I'm sure we would have had friends that would have added it, we wouldn't have the opportunity to deal with the pre-funding crisis, the Medicare integration, and the 6-day delivery. So again, it's just an example where we had to agree where we could agree, be able to move forward, and then fight for another day on those other things that are important to us. And again, the more financial situation of the post office is shored up, the better argument we're going to have when we go back to Congress at other times with the service standards. Because in the past, every time we've raised it in appropriations, the post office comes forward and says, well, we just can't afford to do them. Well, guess what? If we help right the ship on the finances, that argument becomes weaker and our argument becomes much stronger.
We had a question from Glenn in Tampa. Glenn says that he's a veteran who receives his medication through the mail, wants to know if this bill will help the Postal Service stay strong in the future.
Absolutely. You're talking about a projected $50 billion of savings over 10 years. And part of what we're telling people in Congress is the people of the country rely on us exactly for the examples you gave, whether it's medicine, whether it's health information, whether it's financial transactions, whether it's e-commerce, whether it's the birthday cards to the grandkids. The people rely on us. And the stronger the finances are, the better staffing there will be, the better the post office hours will be, the better the delivery will be, the better the service standards will be. So across the board, this legislation means a tremendous amount for the kind of service that the post office can and should provide the people of the country.
And why don't I invite you to just to remind people again what we're asking you to do. If you care about this bill, how do you help us and help the people of the country get this across the line? What can folks do?
They can call their United States Senator at 844-402-1001. We have a flyer that they can download, and they could email, as President Dimondstein say, and tweet the message out and get the message out, and they can call more than once.
Right. Call twice and get all your friends, family, neighbors. I was talking to my wife today. I said, you know, we got 3 grown daughters and we haven't asked them to do that. We better get off our you-know-what. And we're going to do that tomorrow. We got cousins of mine that are extremely supportive of the Postal Service. We don't know if they know about these phone calls yet, but tomorrow we're going to find out. And it's just an endless number of people that we know individually, collectively, through our various organizations that we belong to. Look, the post office has a 90% approval rating amongst the people of the country, across the political spectrum. Doesn't matter if we're Republicans, Democrats, Independents, and we want everybody throughout the entire political spectrum and throughout the country, from rural to urban and everywhere in between, to make these calls. And if we ask, people will, because people trust, people need, and in many, many cases, the majority of people love the public postal service and what it means to their lives and what it means to our country and our communities.
Mark, I was talking with some relatives of mine about the importance of this postal reform bill. And they said, Judy, last month you was talking to us about voting rights. You know, do you ever stop? And I just shared with them a quote from John Lewis, Congressman John Lewis. Ours is not a struggle of one day, 1 week, or 1 year. Ours is not a struggle of one judicial appointment or prudential term. Ours is a struggle of a lifetime, or maybe even many lifetimes. And each one of us in every generation must do our part. Call your senator at 844-402-1001.
And Stephen, if it's okay with you, I'm going to leave that as our closing. That's a wonderful message. Carry on, sisters and brothers, APWU members, and all our good friends and allies. Let's get across the finish line. Let's win that gold medal. This is a once-in-a-generation opportunity, and it's up to each and every one of us to make sure we do our part to make sure that we win. And sisters and brothers, we're confident that together we will. Thanks so much for joining us tonight. We'll have more live streams with the president in the future. We'll be able to address more in broad stroke many issues. But tonight, we just focused on this. This is a call to action. Let's get it done. Solidarity forever, all.